Hey everyone. So my name is Saurav Chatterjee, and I'm a senior software engineer here in Unity Technologies. I mainly work with the games team, and we help game developers make their games better using Unity Engine or something else. Uh, it's an honor and a privilege to be part of this panel and to have a look at all the projects. Thank you everyone for submitting. Let's see how it all goes. Sasu?
Uh,
So,
yeah, go for it,
yeah.
Sasu.
Okay. Yeah, Sasuloke, hello, everyone. Um, I work at the PHZ Game Studios. Um, I have background in using Unity and making games, background in game business as an entrepreneur, also a programmer background. And yeah, I started using Unity about 10 years ago. So I've seen a lot of developments and stages of different Unity versions. And yeah, very happy to be here.
All right. Now, my name's Thomas Winkley. I also work at Unity Technologies. I work as a technical marketing advocate. So I am basically a Unity developer. I've been using the engine for 7-ish years, but I work with academics and nonprofits and help them either teach Unity or build projects and things like that. So, yeah.
Thank you, guys. And let's go in that same order. And Soraf, maybe you take the floor and the screen.
Okay, let me start sharing my screen. Uh, Right, I think that shows my screen. So this is a game which I have been reviewing basically, and the this game has been submitted by Jose Arens. So if I'm mistaken with the pronunciation, please forgive me. But let's see what this game is about. So initially, we see there is a sort of a tutorial about the controls and the objectives of the game. The game basically focuses on a person's journey from uh, being a baby to an elderly citizen, and they basically have two components. They can consume food, healthy food, or junk food, and based on what food they consume, they're going to gain energy, and that energy is going to spend for them to finish the game. So the game runs on a timer, and so this is well, the controls are on the keyboard, and this is a baby, and they don't really have junk food available when they're a baby. So this is how you consume a food by just going through it, and then you age up and become an adult. This is a healthy. These are healthy foods. And these are junk foods. So when you have junk foods, you basically decrease your life expectancy. Time is running there, but you also increase your energy no matter what food you consume. This is when you're in office or you are like a fully grown adult, and again you have choices to consume food based on the food you consume. You are decreasing or increasing your energy and life expectancy. And when you're old, you can no longer increase your life expectancy. You can just consume some, some medicine to just go forward. But you see the timer on top. That's the energy that you can have, and well, it's a rundown timer basically. So when it runs down, the game ends. So this game will run for another 20 seconds before it ends, or if the player can reach the portal. I guess. But I don't think you can based on the speed at which the character is moving.
The portal is just an apt metaphor for life.
And yeah, so the score basically is a score-based game. The score is 88. Well, that's how long you have survived in here. So that was the game, and let's have a look at the code. So the game is fairly simple. There are very few scripts in this game. While reviewing this game, what I found most interesting is that the scripts were relatively well written, and there was not a lot of uh, fluff around here. Let's say not a lot of stuff that is hard to understand for a game of this size. It's fairly self-contained and straightforward. Some points here. Let me just get my notes. Yeah. So one point is that if I take a look at the game, basically, you will see a lot of the values here are in the editor, in the inspector. Um, so that is good. There's no hard and fast rule for not doing that. But what Unity suggests, what we suggest as a best practice, is to extract those and put them in some sort of a scriptable object, because there might be situations where your editor might crash, mostly our fault at the engine side sometimes. But when that happens, there are issues that you might lose your inspected values. So if you have already balanced your game with a certain amount of values or certain things, it might be difficult to get them back. So scriptable objects are a good way of putting it there. Next thing is, so there are some usage of get component. Let me find them here. So we have inside update. Well, we have some usage of get component particle system, and then we are stopping. This is not the greatest practice, because get component can be very expensive, because it goes from the managed side, that is the C# side, to the C++ side. Ideally, it should be written as some sort of a cached value, and then we can access it in update. Of course, like it compounds, especially when it is in something like update. Um, then there is also the case that, well, this runs for the particle system, but for example, when there's a particle being instantiated, it is destroyed after a certain amount of time. Instead of using destroy, it is recommended to basically switch it off or pool it, so to speak. There has not been any usage of pooling in the scheme as far as I have seen. Um, One more thing is that this game manager is a hybrid between something that controls the UI. As you can see, there's lots of set active false and true and so on. So these are basically UI. But it also, at the same time, starts the game using like sends a message to player manager to start the game. And this is where we get into the stages and as such. So this is well, it's not a problem here based on the size of this project, but this can get quickly out of hand because we do not have a dedicated UI manager, which can just focus on just the UI stuff and not really get much into the logic. So for this, I would recommend that there could be something like an observer pattern with events and actions, or even custom events that could have been written in this aspect. Although for a project of this size, it's fine. It's not a problem. But if the scheme has to be scaled up, that might become an issue in the long run. So these are a few things that I have found that could be improved on. But otherwise, kudos to the developer for writing the code relatively cleanly, in a self-contained way, in a way that was easy to understand, and also for making a game that's fun to play. There's an honorable mention that I would like to mention here. Let me open my notes again. For Pavlo Yanchuk, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. Your game was really nice, but the problem with the game was that well, the GitHub project did not have the Unity project attached, so I couldn't really inspect the game. And because you didn't even attach the solution of the project in the GitHub, I couldn't really inspect it in my code review, in the coding IDE, or during my code review. So that game would have won really if you had attached that. But you have done a good job, really good job in emphasizing coding standards in that game. Uh, I think we will share our feedback with you in the upcoming future, where you can see how it went. But for my judgment, I think I will go for this project. So that was me. Let me give back the mic to Oleg.
Yes, and maybe Sasso, do you want to go first? We have time, so no rush.
Yes. Yeah, let me see. Share my screen here. So maybe you can see the screen now. Yes, so I was going through the games and submitted here, and I think this was from the code side wise, this game called Overlumbered, funny name, was one of the um, let's say most impressive. It was submitted by Josh Koss, and yeah, I'll show you some of the gameplay. I'll just play it here in the Unity editor because I think it's already open here. So basically, this game you control the WASD keys, your character here, and then you walk up to these trees. The trees are growing all the time to this forest, and then after cutting down some trees, you get money because you sell the trees, and then you can sharpen your axe, which makes you cut the trees faster. So basically, a nice combination of this controllable character and idle or incremental game mechanic. Actually, this was quite addicting game loop because after some time you get more and more upgrades that you can upgrade here. So you can sharpen the axe, then you can at some point get a chainsaw actually, and okay, now we get to increase the swing speed, so we get to cut down the trees faster and faster. Yeah, okay, maybe I'll go to the code then. So first of all, I was checking all of the submissions, the kind of structure in the Unity editor first of all, and this game actually was quite very well organized. The scripts are separated from like a game logic or player controls and menu logic, or all in like clear places. So it was easy to find it, and that's also important in games. When the game project grows and there are more and more assets, it's important to keep things clear, so you and other developers can find it actually where things are, and they have some kind of structure. So there was the main components for this game was the user interface manager file found in the user interface manager game objects. And then there was the controller for the player object, the controls for the WASD keys, basically. They were separate in the player object, so that was quite logical. And then the game manager, so all the logic behind the upgrades and how the player is given all the currency in the game. So that could be found in the game manager. So I think that was something that not all of the submissions had clear structure in the project point of view. Also, when you look at this project window here, the files actually were quite well organized. There were scenes, scripts, prefabs, art. They were all in separate folders, so that's yeah, that was clear to find. And for a small project like this, it's of course it's easy to find assets if there's not that many assets, but it's also important to keep things organized when the project grows and yeah. So in the maybe I will increase the font here, so it's easily visible in the screen. Yeah. So in the project files, actually, there were some, okay, those main components I noticed: the game manager, the player object, and the menu or the user interface. Actually, there was a lot of this like nice use of the Unity tooltips. So instead of just having a comment here, there was a helpful tooltip that will be shown when you hover the variables here. And then the private variables were a good thing. That was not in all of the submissions, that the variables were set private that needed to be private, and then they were just serialized, so it can be edited in the project window or the inspector in Unity. So that was good usage of that. Then, as you can see in the project, actually, when I open the game manager in the inspector, all of these values or the game logic can be, or most of it can be edited in here. So all the multipliers, how much does let's say the price of next upgrade, how much does it increase after upgrading it, and what is the boosted income from the upgrade? All of those can be clearly edited here. So that's very good practice, I think. When the game, like this type of game, idle game, it will most probably have a long progression, and then balancing that out is very much easier when you have editable variables here, and you can see what happens, what is affecting what, so you don't have a lot of hard-coded things in the code side. Some feedback: I would maybe have done some of the things as scriptable objects of different classes. I have to check my notes where it was located, but yeah. So there was some inconsistency here, where the player has a script called range trigger. So that is when the player goes on a range from the tree that they are cutting, then that trigger will detect that, okay, now we are chopping the wood. And then there were like different types of weapons here, like chainsaw, axe. They were weapon types, and I think for an incremental game, there will be lots and lots of upgrades and levels. So that is how incremental games work, basically. So hard coding all the weapon types as variables, I think that has some limits. I would have done like maybe scriptable object or some like a listable thing where you can just write the weapon type's name that you show in the menu, and then just check that maybe in the game manager, which is the weapon type at the moment, and then get all that information from a scriptable object or some class object. So there were some improvements could be made always. And then, like here, you can see there's separate functions also for the axe or for the chainsaw. This could maybe, if you continued making this like a lot of weapons with this way, you had to always copy the function and make some small changes to it. Maybe that could be more modular if you had scriptable objects here. Then some other improvements here I could have made or suggested would have actually in the menu, the UI manager. So in that there were, maybe it's easier to show in the project. So the UI manager had all the different menus as child objects. There were the game over page, pause page, and then main menu, and an in-game menu that is visible here. So I think in the UI, I would also do a more separation. So having the menu include all the in-game things, because idle games are quite menu heavy games. So I would maybe separate that in-game menu to another manager or object. And then there was the update UI function, and that is actually updating all of the elements on. Okay, let me find the scene. Yeah, this one I was talking about. So there was this setup elements, and that is just finding elements and calling their setup code. That could more easily be done just by having that separate mono behavior script in the menu, like have a menu or window or view class, and then have that in the start or awake. So this way you don't have to call it on each frame for every component. Yeah, okay, maybe I'm running out of time, but from all the submissions, I think there was quite a good level, but this was one of the I think clearest code. And then I also have one honorable mention. There were many good games, but this I can show this other game called Churros Quest. It was submitted by Laura Heikkinen, and this game actually included a lot of custom-made graphics. The idea was that you play as a dog who is saving this forest and its animals. So quite nice theme also. And in this game, I actually liked how it's constructed. So there was actually this level selection screen. So there was effort put in this game, showing the player that there's progression. It also had this inventory. You can purchase hats and stuff. That also was a nice touch. It gives the player a nice kind of sense of progression, that what happens when I progress this game. That was not in many of the submissions, and the graphics were very cute. We also sent all the feedback for all of the non-winners, but this I wanted to show as an honorable mention. But since it's a programming challenge, I think the Unlumbered had like a best structure in code. Yes. So maybe we can move on to the next reviews by Thomas.
Sure. All right, I will try to be as eloquent as these other two gentlemen. Let's see here. Let's find my screen. We're gonna give you the entire screen experience. Okay, so I had the honor of reviewing some of the projects. Just want to give a quick shout out to Adeline, Jerry, Shantan, Tanvir, and Semu. The games were awesome. Thanks for letting me play them. The game that I decided to review that I thought kind of had the best structured code and put together the best was a game called Sprout by Jerry Ahonen. Apologies if I butchered your last name. Let me boot up Sprout really quick. It was a downloadable executable, so I just got to get in here. Oh, no, this is the code. Wrong folder. Hold on. There's Sprout. There's the game. All right, and hopefully it goes on the monitor I want. Otherwise, nope, it didn't. All right, let me switch screens really quick. Stop sharing, reshare, share your screen. Can I just share the Sprout window? Yes, okay. So this is Sprout, and hopefully the music's not too loud for y'all if it's coming through. But the whole purpose of the game is you are shooting trees onto this little mini planet, and you're trying to grow a certain number of trees, and by hitting them with like fertilizer bombs, and you're trying to not let them get cut down by saws. So this game kind of scratches a few itches of games I liked. I don't know if you ever played Scorched Earth, where you had like the tanks. So you have to like build up power and shoot your trees there. And now that I've got that, I can highlight it and go, okay, I need to fertilize you. Whoops. I just got to remember how to switch. Oh, yeah, right click is my menu. I thought the menu was really nice. So I could grab like this fertilizer, and then I'm going to try to like get it to hit here. Nope, didn't quite get it. Let's go a little harder. Ugh, get fertilized. Ugh, get fertilized. Ugh. Nope, not hard enough. Come on. Ugh. There we go. And then like you could, yeah, so you just basically can shoot. So it looks like the water wasn't done. And then these terrifying saws come moving at you and try to cut down your tree. But luckily, I'm so good at video games, the saw didn't get me. So now we've got this little different one. So now you've got this like hole in the middle, which makes it a little harder to get the tree in. So we're gonna go here. But I really liked how this gameplay went from like kind of cozy and chill to a little bit panicky. You'll notice also like you only have 3 trees growing at once. And so now I'm trying to like get this distance set up. I am doing so much better now than when I play tested it. Now the saw's coming, and I've got to try to like shoot this moving saw with a bomb. Oh no. This is where it gets hard for me for some reason. Got it. So now the saw's gone, and I'm protecting my trees from the evil saws. And then I kind of shoot. So this game is like, it's just kind of addictive and fun. The gameplay loop is really enticing. Did I get it? Yeah, got it. And they're trying to grow all these trees. Now I've got 3 fully grown trees, so I can now try to grow 2 more trees. Let me just practice my urban planning. Oh no, come on, don't let the saw get me. Well, we'll let the saw cut down a tree so you can see what happens. So this is the basic gameplay loop, and I just found it to be really fun. The tutorial was pretty basic. It gives you quick information, and you just kind of dive right in. So I'm going to, there wasn't a quit menu, so let me just Alt F4 this, and hopefully I don't kick myself out of the meeting. All right, cool. So that's the game. It was super fun. I really enjoyed it. I thought the menu was nice. I just thought everything about the game just felt really good and tightened together. So that being said, let's look at some of that code now, huh? Let's see. You share your screen window. All right. So let's go back. Actually, do an entire screen so I can jump between the editor. Okay. So now that we have this pulled up, so don't mind that I'm missing some stuff in the editor. I think I'm missing a plugin for Blender. Which was making this like some assets didn't come over, but that's all right. I'm just reviewing the code. So, going to, I like how the game core was set up as a prefab, and then you just kind of had this prefab follow between the levels. I thought that was really nice, right? Because then you had all your core stuff put together, and then you just had like your level definitions here with your saw manager and your ground. This is where I'm missing some of the prefab stuff, but don't worry about that. And then you had your saw manager, your 3 different saws here, and you had like the distance maximum, the prefab, and all that stuff, what I thought was really nice. So the organization of this is really nice. I also really like the way the project was organized, and I realized that's kind of a dorky thing to dive into, but I really like looking in the scripts folder. You had the scripts broken down based on what they're doing, right? So you had your projectile folder, you had a saw, you had your UI, and then you had your utilities. I thought that was just really nice that everything was organized neatly. That's actually something I get when I'm working with my coworkers. I get dinged on quite a bit. Is it always like, why is everything just mashed into a scripts folder, Tom? And I'm like, because that's what I do. I'm a chaos gremlin, and it's really nice that you took the time to organize everything and make it really manageable. So thank you, kudos. So jumping into some code thoughts, let me pull up my list of notes here. Okay, so I really liked the way that you use your singleton definitions. I thought was really clever. So there's a bunch of different ways to do singletons, but the way singletons were set up in this is there's like, you've got like an abstract singleton class that the singletons can just inherit from. And while that's a really, really good practice, it's just not something I generally see in a lot of projects that I look at, right? So I just thought it was a really clever way to set it up, and it was really smart. Because then you can just inherit from it, and boom, you have a singleton, right? So I've seen it done that way a couple of times, but not as commonly, and I really like seeing that. So that was my first kind of bit of critique because I thought that was cool. I also love that you're using pooling. So you've got a pool utility here, kind of under the same idea, which I really dig, right? Using object pooling. So you've got that nice optimal code. You're not destroying and creating stuff, right? You're just moving it around, turning things off and on, which is super nice. Very optimal, I guess is the word I'm looking for here. The other thing I enjoyed quite a bit is that you for your audio events, you had scriptable objects set up. I actually feel like this game could have used more scriptable objects, to be honest, but I loved that this is a scriptable object setup you had for your audio events. I thought that worked out really, really well, and it was set up nicely. So stuff that I thought could be different or better. So if we look at your score manager, this is pretty much taking the place of the game manager from what I could see. And it's great, but the score manager is doing quite a lot, including managing the score, dealing with some on-level load stuff. So it really was just acting like more of a game manager. So the naming kind of threw me off a little bit, trying to find my way through the code. So just a thought there, like, when you're naming stuff, think about, for you, it probably makes total sense, but for a stranger jumping into your code, especially when like some of your classes are commented more heavily than others, you want to make sure your names are very direct and very confident in what they're doing, so that if somebody walks into your code and it's not heavily commented, they can find their way around easily. So the other thing is, if you go to line 52, so we've got this level index, and you're basically using game object, find game object with tag, right? And then you're looking for the level UI tag, and then you're getting a component. So like this here, right, is just like the fact that you're searching your hierarchy for something. Now, granted, in this game, there's only 15 to 16 objects in the scene, right? It's not that big of a deal. But it's similar to what Swarovski called out earlier, is when you start getting to scale, that can be a huge performance sink. As your scene gets bigger, your objects get bigger. So, and looking through the code, from what I could figure out, this object didn't really ever change where it was or where it existed, scene to scene to scene. So I feel like you could have just cached it. Like you could have just cached it somewhere and you'd be good. Like it didn't. I couldn't figure out a reason as to why you're searching for it. So I was like, well, probably just cache it. The other thing I thought could be done differently. I thought the way you set up level flows was really clever. So the way level flows are set up in this game, right, is you've got your goals basically that's abstract, and then you basically just create another level flow and override that integer and then extend it here, right? It's really clever and well set up. But if I'm thinking about this from the perspective of working with somebody else that maybe isn't a programmer, you've basically given yourself more work. So if a designer comes to you and says, hey, like, I want to make another level, then you've got to write, even though it's only 2 lines of code or whatever, you've got to define that level for them. Where if you were to push this off to, say, an exposed variable in the inspector, an object they can configure, a scriptable object, something like that, they could actually just start defining levels and continue working. And then you could focus on other problems or other things you want to fix, right? So this is kind of a two-way one. I thought it was a really, really cool way to set it up. But then I was like, okay, but if there's anyone that's not a programmer having to work with this, it's going to make collaboration that much more difficult. So those were really my only big notes of feedback. Overall, I thought this was a really well put together project. I thought the code was in almost every class really easy to read, easy to jump through and figure out. And I thought the game was just really fun, and I had a blast playing it. So thank you for submitting. I didn't go the extra mile like everybody else and have honorable mentions, but I do want to say thank you to everybody again that submitted. I had a blast reviewing all these games, and it was just super fun and super cool. And I hope we get to do something like this again next year. So with that, I think we're leaving some time open for Q&A. So let me just go ahead and hit the stop sharing button. And we've got about 9.5 minutes. And I'm not sure if Oleg takes over from here or what we're supposed to do.
Yes, please. So thank you very much to the winners. To the winners, we will reach out and give the prizes. So now is the time for the Q&A. We reserved some time, so please put the questions in the Q&A section for the panelists.
There is one question already from Pablo. Hey, Pablo, thank you for submitting your game. to answer your question says that you have used projects or assets that are third party. Yes, you're right. Probably not a great way of putting them on GitHub because, well, not great for sharing those, of course. But what you could have, what somebody else also did for submission is you bundle the project and send it to us. Because we need the project to actually assess it. Otherwise, it becomes just so. For example, when you open the code base or the code, like the whole workflow, it is kind of messed up because I cannot connect what is happening in the game. The game is really well made, but other than that, yeah, I mean, so next time if you're participating in something like this, or you're sending your project to, let's say, to review to someone, then I would really suggest that you send them a zip. That way, you're not really sharing the plugins openly, but at the same time, the person who is looking at your game is kind of figuring out what's going on. Do you guys have anything else to add to it?
No, I think that's a great ad. And honestly, thank you for being aware of not being able to distribute assets. There needs to be more of that in our world, right? Like respecting creators is really important. So I really appreciate that you thought about that as well. Yeah, I think that's really the only solution here because you shouldn't throw up asset store stuff on GitHub. So
Yeah, I also answered something for the text box there. But yeah, overall, the submissions that I was looking at, I think for this kind of competitions or challenge, I think one good tip for all participants is to keep it simple. There were some of the submissions that had a lot of assets in the scene, a lot of like nice 3D assets, but maybe they were not even consistent. Somewhere low poly, somewhere more photorealistic, and then maybe the focus was adding a lot of stuff, but that is not maybe the way to go for challenges. If always focus on the most important things first. If the core game loop works, and the code is well done, that is the main thing, not the amount of assets.
yeah, I get stuck in that a lot when I'm building small projects, right? Because you get so excited about what you're doing and you start like adding stuff, and like it's like another form of scope creep. Like you're not just scope like creeping on like how much stuff you want the game to do. It also can like really start bloating the project because you're like, oh, this would look cool over here, and this is. But yeah, I love that tip from you, Saso, of start small, right? And then you can add more stuff later, but starting small lets you build it up, I think, a lot more efficiently.
I have a question actually. Yes, you wanted some.
Yeah, one thing that I noticed that nice combination for, because this event also had the graphical portfolio or graphical challenge, and then I think one of the games were made as a collaboration for the graphic designer made the graphics and the programmer made the programming. Yeah, so nice cooperation there.
I have a question because majority of the attendees are juniors in these events who are looking to kickstart their career in the games industry. Many of them are programmers. And my question is that how common this kind of challenges when people get hired? And what is something that they should maybe exactly be focusing on? Like a test assignment in their test assignments. How common the test assignments when getting the job in the like as a programmer, and what is there like to maybe focus on?
Yeah, I think I can take that because I have not a very long ago. I actually was somebody who was from India, and I wanted to move into Europe, and I was basically applying to every game company that I know of here to basically hire me. And more often than not, I found assignments, small projects, proof of concepts. Sometimes it's a go as you like. For example, there was a studio who wanted me to remake one of their games, at least not the full game, but the core loop of that particular game to emphasize that I can basically make something like that. there was a company which gave me a full assignment with directions, for example, as to what to do, what are they looking for, and what they are not. Sometimes you get feedbacks based on what you have submitted. Sometimes you don't. Well, sometimes, if you move to the next round, that itself is feedback enough to ascertain that you have done the job well. But yes, it is quite common, and also I think it is a good practice for participants to actually make projects. A game that you have been playing, be it on a console or on the mobile device. If you know how to replicate the core mechanics, it's always good practice, because you never know what you may be facing at work at some point. And at the same time, it's all fun, right? I mean, making games, I think majority of us, we came in here because we felt some sort of a fun doing it. So I guess unless it becomes a chore for anyone, I think you just keep doing it. The more you do it, it gets easier. Your thought process and everything, they just fall into place. And in no time, you would be surprised by your own abilities to actually code up stuff that you probably would discount yourself from doing a few, some time before that you actually started doing this. So, if does that answer your question, Oleg?
I could add something.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, yeah.
like for code review, or when you apply somewhere and they let you do a assignment, then I think one of the important thing is that to be prepared to explain your own code and to understand what it actually does and why did you choose to do it in the way you did it. So also there, like, it's not the amount of code, it's the uh, your understanding of the code. Yeah.
There are some questions on the Q&A. Let us take the question from Vasia. Um, do you guys want to take any of it?
Yeah, that's a so Vasi was saying, what is the ideal time to spend on a test assignment to know if you are ready for the scope and level of work or not? I mean, I think that's kind of a like to me that's like a two-tier question, right? Because like I feel like if a studio is giving you an assignment that takes 40 hours, that's probably bad on the studio, right? Like they shouldn't be asking you to give them a week of free work to vet a job. That being said, if it's something that should only take a couple of hours and it's taking you 40 hours, that might be a really good indicator that like there's some things excuse me, there's some things that you need to go look into that you may be like that you can then use as a skilling up opportunity. um but for me, I think, I think 3 to 4 hours is probably the most I would be willing to spend out of my time to submit like a project like that. I think after that, I feel like I'm sending them an invoice, but that's just kind of my personal opinion, right? Like I think, 3 to 4 hours is probably a good window for a project like that. What do you two think?
Yes, I agree. For sure. I mean, it depends on the kind of task, of course. What do they want? Do they want like a full-fledged? For example, I remember one of my assignments was quite long, but it actually wanted to test whether I can make games based on the test-driven development practices. So typically, you cannot just make a trivial example because that's unit testing, of course. But that would take longer. So obviously, it depends on the scope. But there's also another question by Vasia asked earlier, where she's asking, do you have general advice for talents who are not familiar with test assignments? How should they prepare for the process? So, what I would say is most of the companies that you are going to apply to, they will have their guidelines. Some of them would have their blogs as to how to prepare. Because so just like you are trying to attract a job to do it, the companies are trying to attract you as a top talent to work on their games. So most of the companies, they would advertise their job, and for example, they would actually give you clear instructions. Or if you have a session with one of their HRs or recruiter, they would actually give you pointers as to what to do about it. So again, it really depends on the situation, the job, and the kind of game or the kind of project that you're supposed to do for them. uh, in general, I would say just keep at it. Just work on the muscle. Making games is like a muscle, so just work on it as much as you can. As long as you find it fun, I think you would be you would be good.
Thank you. Thank you, Saso. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Saraf. Thank you guys for being with us. Thank you for all the submissions. And if you have any comments for the submissions, then we will distribute those. But we'll discuss that later.
Sure.
Yes.
Thank you,
Thank you,
guys.
everyone.
Thank you very much.
Take care, y'all.
Yes.